Hello and welcome to video 2 of the Intro to Qualtrics video series. In this video, we're going to talk about other question types, forced responses and randomization, how to use page breaks, skip logic, and display logic. We've talked a little bit about some of these in the last one, but we're going to talk a little bit more in this one too. I'm going to click back to our survey. So this is where we left off. We have this randomization, and we already had a skip logic here. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to go ahead and add in our next question, which is asking the respondents to rate feelings towards each of an organization, and there's 4 organizations. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that as plain text. And if you forget to change that over, which you can always do, Rich Content Editor, this gives you options of bold, italicized, and some other options here too, and you can go ahead and remove that formatting if you want. So we have 4 options. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those numerical values because this is also going to be randomized too. Now, rather than a Likert scaling, we're actually going to be using a slider for these that goes from 0, which means do not identify with this organization, to 100, strongly identify with this organization. So from this, we're going to change multiple choice, and we're going to use a slider option. And what if the individual just doesn't know? We want to make sure we add the option of that so they can actually click on not applicable. We can change this from not applicable by clicking on there and say don't know. That way we can make sure that we're getting an accurate read on this. We can go ahead and, so we have the grid lines, the minimum value, number of decimal points. You can always change this around. And what we're going to do now is we're actually going to go ahead and add in 2 labels. That way, this provides some context to the respondent. So 0 label is going to be do not identify with this organization. And then strongly identify with this organization. Oops, and I went too far. So when I clicked on enter, I'm going to go ahead and remove that label. So what I do now is we're going to go ahead and we're going to randomize this, display those in random order. I'm going to change Q5 to org, and this one to opinions. Great. So now we actually have a slider where individuals can go ahead and it's a continuous variable, and on this continuum where they fall, or if they don't know, they click on that and then that grays out the slider. So let's say that if an individual has less than 30 on Sierra Club, that we want to get to understand their impressions and ask them, okay, well, please describe your impressions of Sierra Club. We can then do, I'm going to go ahead and click on create a new question. I'm going to create what's called a display logic. So I'm going to type in describe your impressions of the Sierra Club. And I'm going to change this to a text entry. I'll go ahead and make this a little bit bigger so you can actually have it be, I'm going to change this from a single line to an essay box just in case. I'm not going to provide any maximum length, but you can also change this so you can have a maximum characters allowed or a minimum. It's completely up to you. And I'm going to put this as SC underscore follow-up. Now, if they have below a 30, we want them to see this. Otherwise, we don't want them to see this. So to do this, we're going to click on that gear. I'm going to click on Display Logic, and I'm going to select the question. So if First Year Club, it now changes to is less than 30. So if this is less than 30, they're going to see this within it. Now I do want to mention too, so I'm going to go back to Edit. If you click on In Page, it's going to show that on the same field. So as soon as they have below 30, this box in the same part of the page is going to pop open. And you can do the same thing with all the other ones too. Now there's also skip logic. We could actually use skip logic for age. So skip logic is if this criteria is met, then they're going to skip over to a different question. What we can also do then too is I'm going to go ahead back to the top of the survey. Actually, I'll add a block here, and then I'm going to go ahead, block options, I'm going to move this up. I'm going to call this informed consent. And then what we can actually do is, if you have the IRB informed consent document, as descriptive text, you can actually copy that whole information. Informed consent goes here, and you paste the whole thing there. And then underneath this, select one of the following. I consent to participate. I do not consent. And so we can do is we can actually have this be whether or not they consent to participate into the study. Now another option we can do is rather than skip logic, which you can definitely use here, there's also something called survey flow. So I'll actually show you a quick thing of survey flow here. So informed consent, this is our first block. If you click on add below, I'm going to go ahead and choose branch logic and then add a condition. So I'm going to say like, okay, if this question, I'll select one of the following, that's our informed consent question. So if I do not consent is selected, the new element is going to be end survey. So that means if they click on that, it's going to end the survey automatically. This is another way to do it if you have blocks of questions that you want to either show or not show. It's another way to do this. You just want to make sure you click on Save Flow. Great. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a quick thing of how to view this just to make sure everything works right. Oh, and let me go ahead and fix this. So if you click on Preview, in a new tab, it's going to open up an example of the survey. Let's make sure that this consent works. So I'll click on I do not consent. And it's ended the survey. Great. So that works. I'm going to go ahead and click here. Now I'd like to go ahead and choose some of the different options here just to make sure everything's working. Let's say I put in age of 17. Okay, that worked too. Now I'd like to do this just to make sure all possible features are in line. Okay, so we have our different questions here. Okay, and notice how these two questions, maybe we want this on separate page breaks here. Now these are randomly presented. Previous when we wrote it out, Sierra Club was at the top. Okay, so these are all working right. I'm gonna put in there. And when we did that, so if I move this here, notice how that follow-up question disappeared, but if it's below 30, it pops up. All right, so everything looks good. Let me go ahead and get rid of that box and go back into our survey. And let's say we wanted a space, kind of a page break here. That way these two questions aren't showed at the same time. I'm going to click into this question, and then under options, I'm going to scroll down to add page break. That went ahead, and that way when we go through this, these two questions can be on different pages. Let's see what that looks like. There we go. So let's just go ahead, I'm going to click randomly on this. There we go, that looks a little bit better. Great. So now, that concludes video 2. We're going to pick up on the next video of how to distribute surveys, how to download surveys, and so forth.